It's 1:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar. We want to thank you all for joining us. We realize these are unprecedented times, and we want to be able to provide resources that we can for small businesses. And so we're using this as an avenue to get started. And I will turn things over now to our House Minority Leader, Representative Anthony Daniels.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you to the members and participants, and especially our esteemed panelists for taking the time out of your busy schedules to give information relative to the response to COVID-19 and how our small businesses can take advantage of resources related to COVID-19, and giving us a timeline and suggestions on how we're to take advantage of the situation. So thank you for participating from the SBA to Jason Isbell. Thank you for your help, as well as Trevor Smalls. And thank you to our team for making this possible, and the members for your help and guidance and really getting the word out, and also recommending that we start offering these particular sessions. So thank you, members. Without further ado, Katie, I think that I'm not certain as the senior senator from Greensboro. I'm not sure whether or not he's on yet, but we can kind of turn it over to him and then acknowledge the members that are actually on the call.
Yeah, he was having a few technical difficulties getting his microphone to work, so he is not with us at the moment. But we do want to thank the legislators who are here with us, both from the House and the Senate. We appreciate you joining us today and helping to get this call set up for the businesses in your communities. We have a slide that has a list of all of their names. We will put that up so that everyone can know. Yeah, up one more. The legislators that have taken part in hosting this event. And all righty, and so now we'll get started with our presenters. First we have up Trevor Small, and I'll give you the platform now.
Unmute. You all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So good afternoon. Here's just an update of what I've encountered over the last couple of days, and this has been experienced from North Alabama all the way down to South Alabama. So the first thing, and one of the biggest questions, and you all have probably been getting this too, is as it relates to the faith-based organizations, the contractors, the sole proprietors, and some of our just kind of local people that we know that kind of do some of this side work and that they use this as their livelihood. One of the biggest things that's been asked is, can they apply? And the question, to answer that question in short, is yes. But there's going to be a little bit more detail that may be required of them in order to get some of this relief as it relates to the Paycheck Protection Program. So it's just very important that you kind of express to them to join all these different webinars that are going on, that are being hosted, because that's where they're going to get clarity on a lot of questions that they may have, and they'll definitely have a resource to kind of reach out to. And I'm finding that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of people are facing, unfortunately, in our Black and brown communities right now. So being able to get them access to not when I say a resource, I'm not just talking about something for them to read. I'm talking about somebody to answer a actual question, a definitive answer of, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do this, and why you can or cannot do it. So all of the clients that I've helped do this, that's what I've been kind of guiding them on. And honestly, it has turned into really like a holding of the hands, because you got to remember, a lot of these business owners have never been faced with this. None of them really have. So for them, this is uncharted territory on whether they're going to remain open, reopen, or continue operation. So it's very important that we kind of express to them to continue to have patience, do not allow this to overwhelm you, and just take everything one day at a time. So as it relates to the PPP program, everybody needs to start the conversation with their bank, whether they have employees or not, because that is who is going to give us the guidance on, one, what the criteria is going to be for them to apply, two, how they're going to calculate what they can borrow or they get the relief for, and then three, the documents that they're going to need in order to submit to the bank to ensure that they kind of get in this pool of people in order to get this funding. So as it stands today, I have not gotten any guidance from the SBA, the SBDC, or anyone as it relates to the criteria for the contractors, the sole proprietors, and the contract, and the barbershops and beauticians. So tomorrow supposedly is the date in which they can start applying. But we still have not received any guidance on what documents they need to have proof of, other than speculating the equivalent documents in which the employers had to submit. So if we can kind of get some guidance on that, I think that it definitely help answer a lot of questions that maybe a lot of you all are getting or have gotten. The other thing is encourage everybody that you all come in contact with or who has some of these questions to apply for the EIDL advance. Everybody, if you're a business owner, you qualify. All they need to have is a bank account. So it's very important that they apply. It takes, on the application, it says it takes 2 hours. I can see it taking 2 hours if you don't have access to the information readily available, but tell them just to take their time and complete the application. It is there. Those questions on the EIDL advance up to $10,000 repayment, those are very simple questions. And it's just asking generic information, name, EIN number, telephone number, email, revenue, expenses. That's it. It's not going into a great detail about it. So another call that I was on, they had asked, kind of, when should these people expect this money? It was written that they were supposed to expect it within 3 to 5 days of applying. I can tell you now that has not happened. So now the question is, when should these people anticipate getting this money? That's something that I can't answer right now, especially for all of my clients, because I haven't been given any guidance on that. So it's very important now. I think we're getting to a point now where where we need more answers than questions that we're giving out. So it'd be very helpful if the SBA could kind of give us some guidance on tomorrow's applicants, what they would need, and how we need to, kind of make sure that these applicants gets access to all this information. So that's kind of where we are as of today. And I mean, if anybody has any questions, I mean, I'm open to answer anything.
Trevor, I think that many of the individuals that are on this call are new, and so
okay,
probably want to reiterate some of the points that you've made in the past, so that you're catching them up, because there are some individuals on here that are new to this webinar. Okay.
So let me kind of recap what the last 2 or 3 conversations that we've had on this webinar. The first one is there are 3 different programs that are out there that are being offered by the government as it relates to the COVID-19 relief package. The first one is the EIDL advance repayment, which is completely forgiven if it's awarded to you. The second program is the Paycheck Protection Program. That is to ensure that employees are able to keep money in their pocket. The third program is the EIDL loan. That one is not forgiven, but it's at a very low interest rate. Each one of those programs has a set of criteria tied to them. Right now, we only know the Paycheck Protection Program criteria, and we have a glimpse of what I see as for the EIDL loan. So the Paycheck Protection Program criteria, very high level. You got to have more than one employee on the payroll. You must be able to provide supporting documents for any expenses that you intend to pay with this loan. And as long as you pay with those expenses that the bank outlines for you, the loan is completely forgiven. So that's the great thing about that. The second loan is the EIDL advance loan. It's completely forgiven. And I know we kind of get scared when we hear that word loan immediately. Everybody starts thinking credit. According to the guidelines, credit does not play a factor in that loan. It appears, and this is all based off what I've seen, it appears that everybody's applying to go into this pool for this potential advance of up to $10,000. But we don't really know how they're going to choose these people. So earlier today, I was on the call with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and he said that the guidance he got on his call, on based from his superiors, was they're basing, because keep in mind it's up to $10,000 for the advance. They're basing that amount of money being allocated off $1,000 per employee. So if you put on there that you had 2 employees, it's assumed that you're going to get $2,000. If you had 16 employees, it's assumed you're going to get the full 10,000. So I just got that piece of information today. This was the first time that I've heard the formula in which they're going to do that with. So I'm looking to see some guidelines written to kind of outline that same thing. And so we'll know. Hopefully, we'll know more about that in the coming days. The EIDL loan, which is just what it is, that's an actual loan with a very low interest rate and what they call very relaxed criteria. That word relaxed meaning normally they will require you to put up some level of collateral, which they're not necessarily requesting. And normally you would have to have a pretty high credit score, which is not the case in this particular instance now. So those are the 3 packages that are being offered. And everybody can apply for all of them. It's just a matter of the documentation that you're going to need to support any claims that you make on what they call the borrower's worksheet. So that was kind of piggybacking off the last 2 calls that we had and some of the information that we did go over.
I would also add to that what Trevor mentioned. I'm aware of individuals that applied for the PPP loan a couple of days ago that have already received their dollars, and so that's something that that we should keep in mind, that the turnaround time for if you have all of your documents is fairly quick.
Okay, and then the other thing is another good source that we want to look at is treasury.gov/cares. So from my understanding, this is where you can definitely get information as it's being released. So therefore you can get it timely. I know a lot of you all probably not going to be checking that site every hour, but I will say if this is of any level of importance to you, you need to review every single resource that comes across, because some may have something different, some may have the same, but at least you're getting consistent information.
If any individuals have any questions for Trevor, there is a chat box where you can type in your question, and we'll answer those questions in real time.
Some people did actually. Do you want me to read them or?
Yeah, you can read them and respond to them.
Okay. So we have a barber who asked the question. He said he already applied. Okay, if you already applied for the EIDL, you're fine. You just have to wait until they reach out to you. As far as when I say they, meaning the SBA. If you're applying for the PPP, you can't apply until tomorrow if you're a barber. So tomorrow you have to reach out to your bank and let them know, I am a contract worker. I need to know the criteria that I fall under for the PPP program. So that's kind of where you start. And then once you get that information, then you'll definitely know how to proceed. Another question is, sad to see the EIDL is only 10 grand. I have a lot of 1099 subs, but I can only put down myself as an employee. Yes, that's true. You can only put yourself down. Well, no, if you can put your subs down as employees, but the terminology is not necessarily there an employee. And that's been my biggest conversation when I do get a chance to speak with the SBA and the SBDC is the language. They keep mentioning employees, but not mentioning the contractors in which you pay or the subs in which you all pay. So that has been definitely a topic of conversation is that language. There was a mention of applying tomorrow, apply for what and who. So the people who can apply tomorrow are the barbers, beauticians, gardeners, dog walkers, if you wash cars, all of those people are the ones who can apply tomorrow.
And so what we want to do now is keep the questions coming as you think about them for Trevor and whomever, but we want to move on to the next presenter and let them present, but we'll make certain that we leave time for questions and answers as we move through this.
And our next presenter is Jason Isbell.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys today. Representative Daniels and all the legislators, you're certainly to be commended for trying to put something like this together. My name is Jason Isbell. I'm the Vice President of Legal and Governmental Affairs at the Alabama Bankers Association. And I'd like to talk specifically about some of the things that Mr. Small just mentioned. I can tell from being in several of these webinars that this gentleman knows what he's talking about, so I certainly appreciate him being available for today's call as well. There are several programs that are available for small businesses under the CARES Act, and most of you small business owners on the call have probably heard about all of them. What I'd like to focus on for just a little bit is one specific part of the CARES Act, and that's the Paycheck Protection Program. I'm focusing on that because the members of the Alabama Bankers Association are who you would need to see in order to access funds under that program. For the EIDL advance or the EIDL loan that Trevor talked about, you actually work directly with the U.S. Small Business Administration for that. But for the Paycheck Protection Program, you would need to call your banker. As Trevor mentioned, last Friday, April the 3rd, businesses were able to start filing their applications for this program. Tomorrow, independent contractors and self-employed individuals are able to start filing their applications for this program. This program sets aside $349 billion in loan funds that, if done correctly, can be forgivable, and that's a pretty important point. So let me go through and talk about a couple of things related to the Paycheck Protection Program, and then I'll turn it back over to Representative Daniels and Katie. First of all, it is a Small Business Administration program. The SBA is a great vehicle from the federal government standpoint to handle this program, but the SBA has never been tasked, nor has any federal agency ever been tasked, with trying to get so much federal money out into the economy. So last Friday, when these applications started coming in, there were some technical glitches. You may have read something about that over the weekend. You may have heard that banks were having trouble applying for these funds. You may have heard that banks were having trouble just getting into the system in order to apply for these funds. But I can tell you that Monday was better than Friday and that Tuesday was better than Monday. And so we're hoping that as these days progress, that all of the glitches are getting worked out. And I'm happy to report that almost every Alabama bank that's participating in this program is able to access the system now. Let me also state, secondly, that these loans that we're talking about are forgivable. You might wonder, how much can you apply for as a small business owner? There's always going to be specifics that apply on a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, if you calculate the average total monthly payroll you had over the last year, and you multiply that times 2.5, that, generally speaking, is the maximum amount you can apply for a PPP loan. So if you have $1,000 a month, let's just say, $1,000 a month is your average total monthly payroll, and the amount you can apply for a PPP loan is $2,500. Now, this loan was designed by the government to keep employment and compensation levels stable for an 8-week period of time after you receive your loan funds. So if you do that, then you can have 100% of that loan forgiven. If you spend at least 75% of your loan proceeds on compensation, maintaining employment and compensation for your employees, and you spend any of the remaining proceeds on things like mortgages, rent, utilities, interest on debt, then all of your loan proceeds will be forgivable. And Trevor's right. We use the word loan, but this is not like a typical loan that we might think about when it's time for us to buy a new car. When we do that, we might go to one bank and give them information about our income. They might run a credit check on us and want to talk about the collateral we're going to put up. We might then walk to another bank and get a completely different picture, even though we still have to submit all of that information. For this particular type of loan, however, there is no guarantee required. There is no collateral required. No one's checking your credit. No one's checking income statements. And it doesn't matter if you go to bank 1, 2, 3, or 20, the terms are going to be the same for the loan everywhere you go. Everybody's going to be able to offer you a forgivable loan. Everybody's going to be able to let you defer your first payment on that loan for 6 months. And if you aren't able to pay back what's not forgiven in that 6-month period, then you will have an interest payment. It's 1% interest, and there's a 2-year term for the loan. So very, very favorable rates of the loan. It's important to point out that banks are treating this program a little bit differently. But again, generally speaking, you can go to any lender in the state and apply for this loan. When this law came out, there were 110 banks headquartered in Alabama. And at that time, 103 of them were already ready to do this loan. For the other 7, it's just as simple as somebody at that institution emailing the right form to the right email address in Washington. Now, that being said, banks have the ability to take these loans and do with them as they please. Some banks are saying, we're going to take loan applications from anybody, whether they're our customer or another bank's customer. Some are saying we're going to restrict it just to our customers. So I would encourage you to start with the bank where you have some type of relationship, whether it's a checking account, a savings account, something like that, just because they're already going to know you, they're already going to have the information they need for you, and the process will go a little bit quicker. But if that bank, for example, says, hey, we're done, we're not doing any more of this, we're having so much trouble, then you can go to a bank with which you currently don't have a relationship, and you can file for that PPP loan there. And finally, I'll talk about borrowers that are eligible. Trevor's right. If you have any type of business entity, whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you are self-employed, or whether you have a company, and you have 500 or fewer employees, generally speaking, you're going to be eligible for this. Importantly, there are some entities, particularly 501c3 entities and churches, that may not normally be eligible for SBA programs, but who are eligible for a paycheck protection loan. So our message from the Bankers Association is similar to what Trevor just said. Near the top of whatever to-do list you've got, please put call your banker, because that's where you're going to need to go to access these paycheck protection program loans. I'll also mention that there might be things available at your bank that have nothing to do with the SBA or any federal or state program, but that might be able to help you. And that's because banking regulators seem to be bending over backwards to let banks help their customers in a way that they might not have thought about a year ago. So I would certainly echo what Trevor said earlier about reaching out to your bank. If you've got a business that you can certify as having difficulty because of the COVID-19 pandemic, please go out and talk to that bank and see what's going to happen or what options might be available for you. And that also goes for folks who might have applied for the EIDL loan that Trevor was talking about earlier. If you applied for an EIDL loan, which he mentioned is something you have to pay back, you can still go and apply for a PPP loan. You can actually refinance that EIDL loan into a PPP loan, and there might be a way for the loans to still be forgiven. I realize this is an awful lot of information, and it's coming at a time when everybody is stressed out about everything, whether it's your personal health, the health of your family and friends and community, and now these economic struggles. But this is a valuable program, and so I hope that everybody will try and carve out some time to see how these programs can help their businesses. You might also have heard that the program might run out of funding, and that may very well be true. Luckily, leaders in Washington are already setting in motion the possibility of adding another $250 billion to this program. If that happens, that will make this a $600 billion program available for small businesses. So hopefully you'll be able to get in there. It is a first come, first served program. So in theory, when the money runs out, the money runs out. But I certainly want to echo what Trevor said about encouraging everyone to go talk to their banks. Mr. Daniels or Katie, whomever, I'm happy to take any questions or turn it over to whoever's next, just whatever you advise.
Yes, thank you. We're going to open it up to questions now. I'm going to read the questions we've already received from the chat box, and either you, Jason, or Trevor can feel free to answer. Okay, so our first one was regarding 1099s. So could she have applied earlier for PPE? They were told they had to wait till the 10th as the sole proprietorship.
Correct, they do. They have to wait till the 10th.
That's right.
Okay, next question. Can a small business apply for both PPP and EIDL?
Yes.
So if they've already applied for the PPP, should they go ahead and apply for the EIDL also?
If they want the loan, so that's a yes and a no. So if they have plans outside of managing their payroll for the next 8 weeks, then yes, they need to apply for the EIDL loan, but they got to remember that is a loan. So there are going to be payment terms tied to that, but there's not going to be a spending criteria. So it'll be just like a regular loan. If they replied and said, hey, I need $250,000, and the bank said, okay, send us this information, we're going to review it. And if they approve it, then you get the money. If they deny it, you won't. So that process, like the denial approval process, is like your normal loan, but it's what they call a relaxed criteria. So it may be a greater chance that you would get this loan in these circumstances versus in normal circumstances. They may require a lot more documentation. Hello?
Katie. Something may have happened with Katie's phone.
Okay.
Let me look at some of the questions. A lot of the questions are relative to 1099s. And so one person asked, for a self-employed individual, can you pay yourself out of PPP?
Yes, depending on which criteria you fall in. So if you're an employee of your company, meaning you receive a W-2 at the end of the year, yes, your pay is included in the PPP calculation. If you're a self-employed individual or what they call a contractor, that criteria has not been released. So I can't say definitively that's going to be a yes. So once they release that criteria, that's when we can answer who and what is all included in the self-employed criteria package. Jason, have you seen anything other than that?
No, I haven't, and I was going to piggyback on that. The conversation about the 1099 complicates everything, and Trevor, I think you would agree with that statement.
Definitely.
If you're a business owner that also has 1099 employees, Trevor, tell me if I'm saying what I'm about to say correctly, but I think that you cannot count what you spend on those 1099 employees into your payroll costs, but the 1099 employee can apply like we talked about tomorrow. If the 1099, the expenditures for the 1099 was able to count both at the employer and the employee level, then it would sort of be a version of double dipping. But that definitely complicates things, and there is hopefully some guidance coming out on that today.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing with that, the whole 1099 sole prop, is we haven't gotten guidance. So right now, what I'm doing is taking the equivalent of what they asked employers and translating that into a sole proprietor situation and assume
Hey, Trevor, I think we're losing you.
that, okay, if they want 941, you know, can you hear me now? Is that better?
It's a little bit better. Yep. It was,
Okay.
sorry, most of what you just said was kind of lost.
Okay. So what I was saying was that right now for the sole proprietors, we're waiting on literally more guidance for you all tomorrow. Hopefully they release that today. If not, we just have to wait till they release it, and then we can definitely give you some definitive answers. Okay. Let's see. Self-employed, pay yourself. Did you say you have to pay the EIDL? So if you get the EIDL advance, no, you don't have to pay it back. If you get the EIDL loan, you do have to pay that back. So you're so part of the EID advance, they would still reapply. I'm a sole proprietor. So this question reads, I'm a sole proprietor with employees and applied on the 3rd of April. Should I reapply tomorrow? If you have employees and you're giving out W-2s, you can apply today.
Okay, so I think we had one. I don't think we went over this one yet.
Okay.
I think it's from Tabitha Eisner. It says, did you say that employers can treat contractors as employees for the PPP loan?
We doubt that, but we're not sure. We won't know until tomorrow, until we get more guidance on it.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding, Jordan, on that particular question, in order to apply for a PPP loan, a business has to certify that it has employees. You can use the fact that you have 1099s to certify that you have employees, but you cannot use what you have given to 1099 employees in your payroll calculation. So in that example that I used, let's say that your average monthly payroll total is $2,000, but 1,000 of that goes to 1099 employees. Then you've got to file this loan application as if your average monthly payroll total is $1,000. That's right. Those 1099 employees, when they go tomorrow, they'll be able, hopefully, and I think this makes common sense, and it'll track with the guidance we see, the 1099 employee will be able to say, here's all I've gotten from all of my employers, and this is how much I can apply for the loan tomorrow. So they won't be able to count it in both places, but the employer who has 1099 employees can certify that he has employees because he has 1099s, but he can't use the payroll cost that went toward those when he's trying to figure out how much to apply for on the loan.
Okay, awesome. Another question that we had back a little bit earlier was, can a small business apply for both the PPP and the EIDL? And if they've already completed the PPP, should they go ahead and apply for the EIDL also?
So one thing that's important in my mind, and Trevor, you may want to comment on this as well, you're not going to be approved, I don't believe, for the same, for both loans for the same purposes. So there is going to be a little bit of a difference in somebody that's doing that. But I do know that if you went and applied for an EIDL, say a month ago, which you could apply for one of those ever since Governor Ivey declared a state of emergency, that you probably should consider strongly applying for a PPP loan either today or, depending on your business type, tomorrow. Because again, that EIDL loan is something that you will have to pay back. And so if you're using that EIDL to pay or to maintain employment and compensation levels among your employees, then I think you would probably find it better for you to go and apply for a PPP loan. You can actually refinance that EIDL into the PPP. That's a very confusing way of saying you can make it to where that EIDL, which right now you do have to pay back, can be converted into a PPP, which you don't have to pay back, again, depending on how you were going to use the funds.
Yep.
And our next question from the chat is, what is the time frame for repayment of the EIDL loan?
It varies. So depending on dollar amount is what I was reading. So they're giving up to 30 years.
Katie, that does kind of bring a nice segue into maybe a timing question on the PPP loan. Guidance came out yesterday that says that banks have to start actually funding PPP loans within 10 days after they're authorized. Now that's been critical guidance, because up until yesterday, literally until yesterday, banks not only didn't know exactly what forms they needed to use to fund these loans, but they didn't know how much time needed to go between when they were authorized and when they were funded. An EIDL is going to have a totally different criteria, and that's going to include when it might need to be funded. Again, the point of the PPP program is to get funds into the hands of small businesses. So for the 8-week period following when they get funded, they're able, in theory, to keep everybody compensated and everybody employed that's on their rolls right now.
Thank you. And then, so piggybacking off of that, application for a sole proprietor with employees, 1099s, applied on April 3rd. Should I reapply for PPP tomorrow?
Trevor, you might think differently about this, but
go ahead.
You might think differently about this. I'm kind of confused how a sole proprietor applied last week. It may have been that they submitted the paperwork. If they're talking about a PPP loan now, if they're talking about an EIDL, that's different. But sole proprietors,
I think what they're referencing is they apply for the EIDL on the 3rd, and then they're asking should they apply for. So that's the one thing that I know these letters and acronyms can get confusing. So if you apply for on April 3rd, you apply for what they call the EIDL advance. Tomorrow, what you apply for is the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, and that's guidance through your bank. So the EIDL is guidance through SBA, PPP is guidance through the bank. So yes,
she said that she applied on Thursday. I mean on April the 3rd for the PPP.
If she applied with a bank, it may very well be that they took that information, and went ahead and put it into the system. It may be that sole proprietors were able to apply last week, and it's just self-employed and independent contractors tomorrow. So if she's gotten or he's gotten verification that that application was filed, then I don't think, if you're talking about a PPP last week, you certainly don't need to go back and apply for another one, because you can only be approved once, and you can really only apply once. So if you feel confident that you applied for a PPP, then there's no need to do that again tomorrow. Just
correct.
To kind of round that question out.
Right. So if she did not apply through her bank, she did not apply for a PPP on April 3rd. If she did apply through her bank, then all she needs to do is contact the bank and say, hey, what's going on with my application?
I agree with that.
Thank you. Next question we have, the employee retention credit says that employers qualify if the business is fully or partially suspended by government order due to COVID. Does that apply to everyone in the state, or are essential workers excluded from that?
From my understanding, it's everybody. So, because everybody's impacted in some way, whether that means reduced hours, whether that means reduced sales. So everybody in the state has been impacted. So from my understanding, everybody can apply for some of that relief.
Thank you. And our next one, question from the chat says, could you summarize which programs churches are eligible for?
If churches have employees, they can apply under the PPP currently with the employees. If they don't have employees, they can't apply until tomorrow. And that's, once again, where we're waiting on guidance on how the church calculations will be calculated. or faith-based organizations that don't have the 501c3 designation.
Trevor, I think Representative Pebblin Warren might have asked that question. Katie, the Small Business Administration published a great frequently asked questions that was focused only on questions like, what do I need to do if I'm a church and I want to apply for one of these loans? I can send you a link to that if that's helpful. I don't know what kind of discussion you can have after this particular webinar with folks that are on the line. But if you're a church or a 501c3 entity, or even if you're connected to a church like a church daycare, that frequently asked question is going to be important for them. Let me also double back on the question about the employee retention credit. I do agree with Trevor that the employee, any business that had its employment disrupted due to COVID-19 qualifies for that. But it is important, and I think I'm right on this, Trevor, that their receipts had to be disrupted at least by 50%.
50%.
Compared to either the last quarter or the same quarter last year. I think it's the same quarter last year. So just because you are a business that has had to close does not automatically qualify for you for the employee retention credit. You do have to have a drop in receipts of at least 50%. Just wanted to throw that out there. But
they still can apply for any one of the programs. So that's they're right. Not excluded from that.
Thank you. One more from Alan Rosen. So since I am the only employee of an LLC, are you saying we can use the 1099s people sent them as income?
Yes, they definitely have to be counted as income.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any of our legislators?
There is a, in the Q&A section of the webinar, there was a couple questions posted in the Q&A section.
Yeah, sorry. Where do you go to apply for the EIDL Advance? Is it a website or is it done through the bank?
It's a website. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
No. I was just going to say what you were going to say. So the EIDL, whether it's the advance or the loan itself, those go directly through the SBA. So I believe you would probably do yourself a favor by going to the Small Business Administration's website, which is sba.gov, sba.gov, and you can start that process out there. Now, I'll mention, I'm not sure if our friends from the SBA are on the line, but that is a very taxed group right now. They've got a lot on their plate, and so I don't really know what the turnaround time might be, but I know that they're trying to work through those as quickly as possible.
Yes, and if you get kicked out the site or the site isn't working at the moment that you log in or attempt to log in, continue to try, because you got to remember every American is trying to apply for that. So all I can urge is patience is going to be the key in this whole process.
Our next question, for sole proprietorships to prove they are a business, do they need to present a Schedule C 1040 form?
Depends on the bank. So some banks I've seen have asked for tax returns. Some banks I've seen have not. But they definitely have asked for organizational documents. So if you're an LLC and you filed articles of organization, they will definitely want a copy of that. They would definitely potentially want a copy of your business license if you have one. And any supporting documents that will support the numbers that are on your borrower's worksheet.
Let me also say something on that too, Trevor, if you don't mind. Banks are now, because of late release guidance, in a better position to be able to rely on what the business owner that's applying for these loans are saying. So banks are probably getting a little bit more relaxed about exactly what kind of documents they need, which is a good thing, I think, for customers. In addition, you can go to Alabama Secretary of State's website and you can get a form that basically is proof that your business is open and your business was open on February the 15th, which is a qualifying part of the PPP loan. So there are multiple ways that you can prove, you are who you say you are. Because to qualify for this loan, you do have to prove that you had employees on February the 15th. So if you started a small business on March 1st, for example, then God bless you for doing that, but you probably can't qualify for a PPP loan because you started after the date.
Okay, we have another question. We already applied for the EIDL loan. With 4 employees, according to what you said, we will probably get $4,000. Can we then go ahead and apply for the regular loan? Where do we apply for that? And what is the limit for that loan?
Well, if by regular loan, they mean the full EIDL, chances are that process was already started when you applied for the grant that you're talking about for the $4,000. The limits on those loans are very different. It's a very different program. I want to say just anecdotally that you can get up to $2 million on an EIDL loan with repayment terms, as Trevor mentioned earlier, up to 30 years. But if by the other loan or the new loan you're talking about, the PPP loan, then yes, you can go ahead and apply. And again, the amount of the loan you can qualify for, the maximum amount of the loan you can qualify for is 2.5 times your average monthly total payroll. And again, that calculation won't include anything you give the 1099s. But let's say that you spend $10,000 a month on average paying your W-2 employees. If that's the case, then you can apply for up to $25,000 in a PPP loan.
All right, next question says, I am a CPA and a consultant. A few questions I have. How does debt forgiveness work for self-employed people? And how does a partnership apply if they have no employees other than the partners? Do they each apply as individuals based on self-employment?
I would say no. They would file under the EIN number, and it asks the question of ownership. So 20% or greater owner monetization. So the money, remember, is designed to go to the company to pay the staff. So that's what it's designed for, as it's rolled out with employees. Now, like as you said, if you all are not receiving a W-2 and you're a partnership, then you all have nothing but owner's draw or distributions to yourselves. You can only apply after the 10th. And then at that point, you would have the guidance on how your calculation will be calculated.
Thank you. Next question. If application for the EIDL advanced loan was submitted last week, when can we expect a response?
Well, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't want to commit to an answer on that. I have a feeling that it's fair to say that they're trying to respond to you as quickly as they can. But again, you're talking about a federal agency that last year allocated about $30 billion in the whole year. They're now being asked to allocate $349 billion. So their system is designed, in such a way that it might just be taking everybody a little bit longer to do what needs to be done right now. I promise you they're working hard. I would say if somebody just asked me this out of the blue, I would say 2 to 3 weeks is probably a fair number on when you can hear back on an EIDL loan.
And I was thinking more like May 1st.
Gotcha, thanks. So next question was, do we know yet what employers will need to do to get the PPP loan forgiven?
Yes.
Yes, we absolutely know what the employers will need to do. So let's just say, for simplicity's sake, Katie, that an employer gets a $10,000 loan under the PPP program, and they want all pennies, all $10,000 to be completely forgiven. Now, again, that employer can take that $10,000 and use it, I guess, in some ways on whatever it wants to use it. But if it wants that money forgiven, then it needs to spend at least 75% of that $10,000 on maintaining employment and compensation levels. So you got to keep people employed. You got to keep them employed at the same compensation levels they were at over the 8-week period after you get the loan. If you've got any money left over after you do that, or if you budgeted in just a certain way, you can use up to 25% of the proceeds for things like rent, mortgages, utilities, and debt. And Trevor, I'd be interested to hear your take on this. But Katie, whoever asked that question might consider opening a separate account that just has PPP proceeds in it, and that's it. We've been hearing people getting that advice and think that it's prudent advice because it'll let you separate your PPP loan proceeds from other funds, and there will be less likelihood that you would be accused of spending that money on something that is not a forgivable purpose rather than something that is a forgivable purpose.
Definitely. Yes, I'm piggybacking off everything he said. The one thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is the initial rule for this was 100% needs to be used for employees. And then they added or you can pay 75% to the employees and then 25% for those other allowable things. But if an employer decides to say, I'm gonna use all my money for employee costs to pay my staff, that's perfectly fine also. So then it's completely forgiven. And yes, I've recommended that to all of my clients, open up a separate bank account for multiple reasons. So the example is, let's say all of us probably have a Dropbox, a Google Suite account of some capacity that we're probably paying for, or something that we have on auto draft. If they drop the $10,000 into that account, your operating account, you would not be able to differentiate you pay for that expense with revenue money, with revenue proceeds, or these loan proceeds. You wouldn't be able to differentiate the two because it all went into one pot. So that's why I'm encouraging all of my clients have a separate bank account. So therefore, if we just need to transfer the money into the account, or if we need to order checks or do whatever we need to from that account, we will have a clear paper trail and clear supporting documents to support every transaction that came out of that account.
Awesome. So I think this will be the last question and then we'll wrap up. This is from Wanda. If I have temporary workers who are provided through a temp agency and I pay their wages directly to the temp agency, can I request payment for them?
Trevor, I think the answer to that is probably no.
No, yeah.
I think that those particular employees that work, again, those folks work for the temp agency. That's different than my employee that I actually have. The temp agency employee, I do think is going to get treated differently. Those employees are going to be able to apply on their own, the temp agency employees, but I don't think you'll be able to count those expenses as a payroll expense for the company.
True, because I have a client that had a similar situation like that where we provide outsourced accounting services for them. So we provide all the staffing for their accounting department. They would not be able to count the cost that they pay me for my staff. I count that cost. So I'm essentially just an operating expense to them or a direct cost to them. Now, if they have no employees and I'm providing that, then they must then file tomorrow under the self-employment portion and then follow that criteria or that guidance going forward to apply for the PPP.
That's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I do see one kind of asking about timetables for the EIDL loans. Do y'all know kind of after people submit, is there any timetable that people have been having?
So the actual loan itself I don't know anybody who's actually applied for that yet. I'm not even sure if that's open to apply for yet.
The advance.
The advance, yes. If you can apply for that, and that's completely forgiven if you get it. But remember, it's up to $10,000. It's not $10,000 to everybody that applies.
Yep. And how do we know kind of a timetable on how long those are taking to get
Um,
responses from?
it was originally said days. Now, as we can see, it's been a week. So Jason said he thought maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I was thinking maybe more like May 1st before you probably start really. You may receive communication about it in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I would imagine late April, early May, we probably hear about disbursements going out.
Thank
But
you
that's
for,
just that's all speculation though, as it relates to the advance.
gotcha. Thank you so much for answering the questions. We do realize that things are always changing, so there are going to be more questions. So if any of you do have questions, we have the slide on the screen. Feel free to send us a message at askahdc@gmail.com. That's askahdc@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to connect you to the right resources. And everyone who has signed up and attended this event, we will be sending out a resource packet with all of the information that has been shared pertaining to this matter for you to utilize. And now we'll turn it over back to Representative Daniels to close us out.
Again, I want to thank the presenters, Trevor and Jason, for really giving us a dynamic presentation engagement on behalf of the House and Senate members. And Senator Singleton, unfortunately, had to get off right before the 2 o'clock hour. He has a interview at 2 o'clock, but he also sends his regards and appreciation to both of you and all of the members that are participating, both House and Senate members that are participating in this particular session, as well as their constituents. And so we'll continue to send out information, giving you the latest and most updated information. We will come back. We will be sending notice out, so please pay attention to our Facebook, and we'll also send you out emails letting you know when we're going to have another session. I do know that next week we'll be talking about unemployment benefits, among other things, and so we'll be make certain that you talk to your representative or senator, and we'll be sure to add any friends or any people that you think this information will be beneficial to. We want to make certain that we're educating the public as much as possible on ways to take advantage of the resources that are available to them. Again, I would like to thank our staff also for doing this. They're doing a wonderful job, as well as all of the members, House and Senate members that are on the platform. Thank you for what you do in your districts, and we'll continue to educate your constituents and bring on phenomenal presenters like Trevor Smalls and Jason Isbell. So without further ado, it is a little bit after 2:03 to be exact, and we promise that we will only keep you from 1 to 2. And so staying in line with that, I want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to visiting with you again soon. Thank you.